Good morning. This skill that we're learning today, we're going to be learning how to order decimals, put them in order from least to greatest, from greatest to least. It builds on and uses the skills that we learned yesterday with comparing decimals. So in order to know what order to put them in, which one's the greatest, which one's the least, and what everything in between is, we have to compare them and see which one has the greater value or which one has a lesser value. Using these place value charts can become handy if you have a number with a decimal to help you figure it out. So for example, if I had three numbers, if I had 3 and, so if we write this up here in our charts, if we write 3 and 29 hundredths was one of my numbers, all right, and then I had 3 and 97 thousandths was one of my numbers, and then I had 3 and 406 thousandths, okay, and I wanted to put them in order. I would line them up and I have to look and I have to see, well, they all have 3 ones, but their decimals are different. So you could use the place value grid to color in the 406 thousandths, the 29 hundredths, and the 97 thousandths and see which one is bigger. And you could kind of visually be able to see it that way, okay? And if we were to do that, which we could, your 97 hundredths would be 9 of these, so 9 squares, and then 7 little ones, so that would be 97 hundredths. Your 29 hundredths would be 2 rows plus 9 more. Apparently I like the number 9 this morning. Okay, so it would be that much. So this is already bigger, okay, than that. And then this one would be 406 thousandths, so I have to borrow this square, and I know every row has 100 thousandths in it. So that means I got to color in 4 rows. 4 rows, and then 6 little ones, because I don't have any squares, I have 0 tenths. And I look at that, and that is actually bigger than this. So this would be the biggest. So if I was putting this in order from greatest to least, it's actually already in order from greatest to least. I didn't even do that on purpose. This one's the greatest, this one's next, and this one's the least. Okay, so this is greatest to least. Okay, most value, next most value, least value. So that's what the purple one is. And of course, very simply, if I was putting it in order from least to greatest, I would just flip them around and put the one with the least value that's worth less first. The middle one would still stay in the middle, and then the greatest one would go at the end. And this would be in order from least to greatest. So there's 2 ways to order numbers. We can order them greatest to least or least to greatest. What we have to be careful with is making sure we're paying attention about what we're being asked to do. And honestly, I think this is the most confusing part for kids, is when you're being asked to put them from greatest to least or least to greatest, to make sure you're paying attention to what order you're being asked to put them in. That kind of is the hardest part sometimes. All right, so you could use your place value charts. That's one way to do it. There's a slightly more efficient way, okay, that if you were given lots of numbers and you had to put them in order, you could line them up and compare them just like we compared 2 numbers yesterday. And even though I told you to line them up and compare them, I didn't see people doing that yesterday. Okay, so like let's say if you had 2 numbers, like if you were trying to figure out least and greatest, you had 2 and 507 thousandths, and you had 2 and 78 hundredths, and you wanted to see which one was greater. Yesterday I told you to put one underneath the other. So take one, line it up, decimal under decimal, ones place under ones place, tenths under tenths, hundredths under hundredths. Okay, and remember, if you put a 0 at the end of a decimal number, it won't change the number. So if you wanted to put a 0 here so that it looked nice and neat for you and it looked everything was lined up, you could do that, because the 0 does not move the 7 or the 8 into a different place. So it's not changing the number. So you can do that. and you would compare them from left to right. So you'd start in the greatest place value, which for these numbers is the ones. Right now they're the same. You go to the next. This is the greatest place that they differ. So what is the first place that they're different? Well, the first place that they're different is the tens place. So automatically this number with the 7 in the tens place is bigger. It doesn't matter about anything else that's after it. Okay? And the funny thing is if you put the 0 here, what you'll notice is that 78 hundredths is the same thing as 780 thousandths. And it's kind of easier that way to see that this one is bigger than this one. If you say 78 hundredths, sometimes it gets confusing. But if you remember, coloring in 78 hundredths is the same as coloring in 780 thousandths. It kind of makes more sense. So then you were to put here, you would put your sign, bigger sign pointing towards the bigger number, right? Eat it up. Okay, so that's fine with two numbers. You use the same strategy when you're dealing with more than two numbers. So let's add a couple other numbers to the mix. All right, so now we want to see which one's greatest, which one's least. So if you take them all and you line them up with the decimals under the decimals, the ones place under the ones place, and the tenths place under the tenths place, you can figure out their order. So let's go greatest to least, okay? And let's figure that out. So we're going to take the numbers and we're going to line them up one underneath another. So let's start with, we'll just go in order. Let's start with that's 2, not 0.2. So 5 and 2 tenths, 2 decimal under decimal, and 507 thousandths, 2 and 78 hundredths, 1 and 999 thousandths, which by the way is still less than 2. All right. So again, we're going to look left to right. We're going to start here. Oh, we already have some differences in the first place. A couple of them are the same, okay, but we have two differences. So the greatest number here is this number already. We know that it's greater than all the rest because the ones place is bigger than all the rest, and the ones place is the biggest number, or the biggest place in these numbers. So I'm going to go ahead and put that number first. It was already first, but 5 and 2 tenths. Okay, now we look here, and our next two biggest numbers are these two. And this one is going to be our smallest number because it has the 1 in the ones place. So that we already know that this is going to be our smallest, so we don't have to worry about that number anymore. So we just have to worry about these two. So now, still the same, move over one more. Boom, right here. The biggest place they differ is the tenths place. This one has more tenths, so it's bigger. So it's going to go 1, 2, 3, and 4. All right, and so it's probably a good idea to number them so that when you write them out, you have them in order. All right, so 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this one goes next, and then this one, and then this one. Okay, and if you were going to do them from least to greatest, you would just do opposite. You would have done the smallest number first, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one. So another good strategy might be to number them once you have them all lined up so that you don't forget.